Tonight we are studying in Tanya, chapter 16. In Hebrew it's called Perez Zayin. Tes is 9, Zayin is 7, 9 and 7 together is 16. So chapter 16. We are right now in middle of discussing something called the Beinoni, the personality called the Beinoni. And I'll explain what that is. In other words, we have in Tanya discusses generally three personalities. I'll give you a brief overview. One is the tzaddik. The tzaddik means the righteous man, which we'll call him on the right side. The rasha, the wicked one, we'll call him on the left side. And the Beinoni is the intermediate one. Now, what we mean to say is by tzaddik, rasha, and Beinoni is as follows. So here we deal with, there's two components. One component is the physical and practical application of your life, which we refer to in Kabbalah, it's called the garments. Now, what do you mean garments? Garments like a jacket. You put it on, you take it off. A shirt, you take it on, you take it off. A hat, whatever it may be, it means you can put it on, take it off, whether you're in the mood or not. That means, for example, we all have different type of clothing, right? So if you're going to like a cocktail party, you wear cocktail clothing, right? If you're going to the beach, you wear beach type of clothing. If you're going out to work, it's different type of clothing and so on and so forth. Which is interesting. You can wear all these different type of clothing. And the question you can ask them, who are you? Yesterday you look like a beach, a guy playing, going to the beach. Today you look like this, if let's say you're a doctor, you look like a doctor, and as a matter of fact, a doctor can dress up like a lawyer, or you can dress up like a sanitation department, or when you go in a synagogue, you dress up like you go in a shul. So, whoa, who are you? But what's interesting is, the most important point of that analogy is that you do not have to be holding on the level of whatever it may be to put on that clothing. It means you don't have to be in the mood of swimming. You can still put on swimming gear. You don't have to be in the mood of going to synagogue, but you can still put on that clothing. You don't have to be in the mood of going to work, but you can still get dressed up for work, etc. So the power, and there's the pros and cons of it is, the pros are you can dress it even though you're not in the mood. The con is it real or not? But back to our point, so we, in the world of Kabbalah, we call the garments that you can put on and take off, three garments: thought, speech, and action. Now, what does that mean, they're garments? That means whether you're in the mood of acting appropriately or not, you can act appropriately.
You fake it.
You can be it or fake it. Exactly. The point is that action. The point is that action you can do if you're in the mood or not.
Right.
Okay, you could fake an action. Well, because an action is an action. So you can, just like you dress up, whatever you're dressing up for. Speech. You can say all the right things, even though you don't believe it. You can say all the wrong things if you know you don't believe it, right? So speech is basically like a garment. You put them on, whether it's true, not true, you're holding by it, you believe in it, it's irrelevant. You can say the right things, you can say the wrong things. The point is speech is not really yet you. We don't know who you are yet. And then you have something which is called thought, right? So your thoughts, you can think about anything you want. You can think positive thoughts even though you're in pain. And you can think painful thoughts even though life is great. And you 100% can choose your thoughts. You're going through a terrible thing, right? But you can still think positive thoughts. It's not a contradiction. And whether you're the same faker, just like when you do the right things and you're not in the mood of doing it. But it's not about fake. It's that the point is that we have full control of our action, speech, and thought, irrelevant what our inner emotions, turmoil, or great condition we're in. So the benefit of that is you can always act appropriate. You're not in the mood.
The question is an inference that I believe you made. I just want to clarify this.
Yeah, sure.
Is that when we have less control over the internal stuff, like the emotions?
So we'll talk about that. We'll get to the, let's get to the internal stuff in a minute. We'll get to that. But let's first focus on the external stuff. So the beauty is that you can be in full control of all your actions, all your speech, and all your thoughts. And that's good news. Now, we call that garments. It's not really you. What is you? Who are you? Well, obviously you have your godly soul and so on and so forth. What is we call the internal structure and makeup? That's your intellect and your emotions. Intellect and emotions. That's already your mindset, whether your upbringing, your education, work, spiritual work that you've done, like meditation and so on and so forth. Your emotions, how you feel, how you develop your emotions, and so on and so forth. That is the internal person who you are. Now, the tzaddik, the righteous, the goal today is to talk about the Beinoni. But let's first talk about the tzaddik, just to give you a frame of reference, and some people are new here. The tzaddik is someone that basically, for sure, his thought, speech, and action are all up to par. He gets 100 in every test. But not only is his thought, speech, and action, which is a given, but even his emotions are totally in sync with God. His intellect is totally lined up with God. He only sees and experiences and feels God, godliness, positivity, joy, happiness. Life is wonderful. There's no room, it doesn't even exist, anything negative or anything inappropriate. It's just not in the radar. Now, obviously, we call it a tzaddik, a righteous man, because that is a very high level. Especially living in this world with all the challenges and all these struggles and all the things that you hear about and so on and so forth. But obviously, a tzaddik has either been born that way, or he's worked on himself pretty hard, because matter of fact, King David worked his whole life to get rid of his animal instinct. And he was finally able to get it, and obviously at the end of his life, he was on that level of a tzaddik. So a tzaddik you're either born with, or you've worked on it, but it's a very high level. To totally transform your emotions that you only feel on a feeling level, everything is great and everything is wonderful, and intellectually be in that place, that's a very high level. Now, that is what a tzaddik. A rasha, on the other hand, the other extreme, his thought, speech, and action is what? He gets zeros on all his tests. He does exactly what he wants, when he wants it, anything that'll make him feel good at the moment, whether he steps on someone, kills someone, or anything. That's what a rasha is. So it means obviously his thought, speech, and action are a disaster, and for sure his emotions and his headspace is in the wrong spot.
Or democratic debates.
Okay.
He's talking about my first wife.
Okay. No comment.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, my jokes.
You can joke and be happy, but all right. Okay.
Being caked.
Here we go. So those are the two. Yeah, you first wife sees that. Now you're in trouble.
That's right.
Okay. So here you go. You have the two extremes. Here we go now to the Alter Rebbe describes the everyday person. The everyday person. And he calls it the Beinoni, which means the intermediate person. And what is the intermediate person? So the Alter Rebbe says like this. And here is a fine line. In thought, speech, and action, the Beinoni. Now obviously we can strive to be a tzaddik, but let's at least go for the Beinoni. In thought, speech, and action, let's start with the action, and we go up. Go up meaning, say, in the spiritual world, we go up referring to more spiritual versus more physical. In the world of action, all his actions are right. He'll never do anything wrong, and he'll always do the right things. Again, we haven't discussed yet what's going on inside. But we're talking about the Beinoni on the outside world. His behavior is up to par. He's not in the mood of going to work, he goes to work. He's not in the mood of feeding the kids dinner, he feeds the kid dinner. He's not in the mood of doing laundry, he does laundry. He's not in the mood of praying, he prays anyway. It's irrelevant, you're in the mood or not in the mood. Actions, you'll never catch him doing the wrong thing. Now, whether you want to call him a faker, a spiritual con artist, it's fine. But the fact is, he's doing all the right things. And that's great. His speech, he'll always be saying the right things. You might have just upset him to the point where he's ready to explode or implode. But guess what? He'll tell you, hey, how are you? Thanks so much. It's so good seeing you, etc. He will not allow the stirrings inside, the pot that's boiling over, to actually spill over where he'll say something inappropriate. He won't do it. He'll only say positive things, and God forbid, say nothing negative. Okay. Thought. As much as there's competition, because your thoughts are working constantly, to enter into the negative world, have negative thoughts, depressing thoughts, inappropriate thoughts. No. Thoughts, hey, life is great. Not only action, not only speech, but even your thoughts. His thoughts are always positive, upbeat. What does God want me to do? Only positive thoughts. Now that's harder, obviously, as you go from action to speech to thought, because we're getting now closer to the inner world. But still, that's still a garment, because you can still think positive things, even though what you're reading and seeing doesn't look so positive. You can say, listen, I don't own it. I don't want to do with it. Life is great. Life is wonderful. How's life great? Wonderful. It is, because God runs the world. I trust in God, right? Everything that comes from God is good, and life is beautiful. That is what the world of thought. Okay, but guess what? Now we're going to take you into the real world of the Beinoni. Yes. In the real world of the Beinoni, let's start with the feelings, and we'll go to the intellect. his feelings are, guess what? Because we know we have a godly soul and animal soul, so his feelings are struggling. On one hand, he's happy. On one hand, maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea, to do something inappropriate, etc. Right? And it could be many variations. So he has an inner struggle. He has an inner struggle. Intellectually, he doesn't necessarily believe or agree, that you should do all the right things or say all the right things or think all the right things. There's a real struggle inside. The energy that's pushing out is a struggle. But, guess what? He stops it. Wait, I know, we'll meditate tonight, we'll work on it, we'll go to the rabbi, right? We'll go to maybe, whatever it may be, to somehow work with the inner stirrings, but guess what? There's one place you're not going. It's like when you tell the kids you can play in the playground anywhere you want in the fence.
Can't go outside.
You can't go outside the fence. That means you want to have crazy feelings, you want to have all these neurotic thoughts, no problem. Keep it in the fence. In the fence. You dress up, you put on that nice white shirt, don't make a stain on it, right? It's going to not look nice. So his thoughts speak, and it's a real struggle. Real struggle. That is, obviously I'm giving you an overview just to get you up to today's speed with today's class. That is basically the life of the Beinoni. The life of the Beinoni.
Beinoni, you pronounce this?
Beinoni. Beinoni, which is the intermediate person. Okay. Anyone can recognize where they fall? Tzaddik, Russia, Beinoni? Don't tell me Russia. We're not accepting that. You see, I'm not letting that in my thoughts.
Most of us are Beinoni.
Let's try to stay in the Beinoni world, right? Okay, at least let's try for that. Okay, let's agree to do that, because you have to realize the Beinoni, because the author said that everyone could be a Beinoni. See, the author made a phenomenal statement, and he said everybody has the power to be a Beinoni. Think about it, because you cannot tell me you don't have the power to control your actions. Because that would be a lie. Because you could control the actions either whether you're in the mood or not. You have the power to control your speech, whether you're in the mood or not. And you have the power to control your thoughts. So everybody could be a Beinoni. We could all be that. The heart, emotions, you can't control your emotions. Your intellect, you can't control that, right? Based on the way you think and so on and so forth. So what happens if somebody was in thought, speech, and action, he got hundreds and everything, and his intellect and his emotions are driving him nuts? Is he a Beinoni? Absolutely. That is the definition of a Beinoni. Now, last week what we discussed was that there's a Beinoni that serves God. What does that mean, that he serves God? That he realizes, oh my gosh, life is great in terms of thought, speech, and action, but guess what? My inner life is driving me crazy. I don't feel this love for God. I don't feel this love for people. I don't feel all these positive thoughts. I don't feel that everything should be peaceful. I feel like once in a while, letting someone know how I feel, right? How am I going to deal with this? So the author of last week in chapter 15, you can go back and listen to the tape on last week, the author explains that there is a term called Oved Elokim, a Beinoni that serves God. Now what does that mean, he serves God? That means his goal is to create healthy, positive, powerful, uplifting emotions for God, to be in love with God, to be in awe of God, which spills over into his whole life. Because if you love God, you love the people. God created the people. What did we explain last week? How does the Beinoni go about doing that? And we discussed last week at length through meditation. By meditating on the greatness of God. So when you pray, which is a great time to do it, or any time throughout the day, but prayer is meant for that. You think about how great God is. Look, he created this world. He created me. He created everything that I have, right? He gave me, if you're married, a spouse, and children, and parents, and friends. And the list goes on and on. We have so many things to be grateful for. That will create real emotions of love for God. Real emotions of being in awe of God. And that will create a real powerful relationship with God. So when the Beinoni goes ahead and meditates on God and about the greatness of God and is grateful for all the beautiful gifts that he has, guess what happens? All of a sudden his emotions start to boiling in a positive way. Now once the emotions start boiling in a positive way, guess what? A lot of the struggle goes away. Now,
it's more peaceful.
Yes, more peaceful. Now the reality is, if that says what's the difference between the Beinoni and a tzaddik, the answer is very simple. Because the tzaddik is basically an autopilot. He's driving an automatic car. The Beinoni, even with that, he's still in a stick shift car. He still has to play with the gears. Because if he stops meditating, guess what? The love goes down, the awe goes down, and he's back to the same struggle. So as long as he's able to meditate, work the shift, right, and fuel the energy, as long as he's able to meditate continually and on a steady basis. That's why we pray 3 times a day. As long as 3 times a day he prays and he meditates about God, and in the prayers, you say the prayers and you think about the prayers, and it creates a real enlightenment in the brain, which eventually spills into your emotions, which eventually spills automatically in your thought, speech, and action. And then you live like a tzaddik, but you're not like a tzaddik because the fact is a tzaddik is an autopilot. He basically just sees it that way. The Beinoni is still working on it. Yeah. So that's what we discussed last week about the Beinoni, which serves God. What does that mean, he serves God? That means that he meditates consistently and consciously to create real, live emotions of feelings of love for God and to be in awe of God. And by doing that, guess what happens? He's a changed human being. Now he's not a hypocrite. Now when he does his actions, he really feels these are the right actions to do. And when he speaks positivity and when he thinks all these great things, it's coming from his emotions, which is coming from his intellect, which he worked on through meditation. That is what we discussed last week. Now, and we said that's like a high level, of a Beinoni.
The struggle's paid off.
The struggle's paid off, but that's a level of Beinoni that serves God, meaning say he worked on meditation. Comes along the Alter Rebbe this week and he says, guess what? I have news for you. Living a life of a Beinoni without that meditation, that's not the goal of the Beinoni. True, the goal of the Beinoni is to get through life where all his actions are great, all his speech is great, and all his thought is great. That's wonderful. And that's really, the goal is to live a great life. Now, but the goal of the Beinoni also is for his emotions to be cooked up, to have this tremendous feeling of love for God and love for people and love for life, and to have a real enthusiasm and joy for life, but coming from an emotion place, not just giving messages to your thoughts and just coming out of lip service, but to feel it. But the Alter Rebbe says, what happens if somebody cannot create that within him? Now, what do you mean someone can't create that with him? So the Alter Rebbe explains, I'm going to go it's actually in a footnote here in this chapter, a little tangent, but it's an important tangent. The Alter Rebbe explains something very, very powerful. That we each, all of us, are souls, where our souls comes from heaven. Now, when it comes from heaven, has the souls come down to heaven, it goes through a spiritual process from heaven, which is the infinite power of God, and it goes through 4 levels. What do you mean 4 levels? 4 spiritual levels. Like the highest level is called the world of Atzilut. What does that mean? Atzilut comes from the word of close. It means it's close to God. It means the spiritual energy, the godly energy is very strong. It goes through the world of Bria, creation, which is now rated as a form of creation. Then so it's going away from the infinite power of God. There's already a creation. Then there's already Yitzir, which is formation. Now there's already more of a form. And the world of Asiya, the world of action, and these are all on the spiritual level. Not necessarily even yet in the physical level, but on the spiritual level, it comes down these 4 levels. Then it goes into, obviously, this world. So what happens is, when the soul comes down, when does it come down? For 9 months while it's in the mother's womb, right? So the soul descends. So the way the soul descends, so it's like a journey. So for example, let's say it's 9 months, and it has to go through four worlds, 4 spiritual energies. So it could happen, I'll give you an extreme. It can spend 8.9 months in the whole highest word of Atzilut, right? And then the last month, it shoots through the last 3 worlds. Now when this soul comes down to this world, because it spent 8.9 months in the world of Atzilut in such a very high level, it's going to see things, it's like a level of a tzaddik. Moshe Rabbeinu was that type of soul. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't understand God wanted food for people. Who needs food? You need God. He couldn't relate to eating food. You want to be inspired? Take out a Torah and study Torah. Meditate. Why? Because he was a soul that spent 8.9 months in the world of Atzilut, and boom, he came down to this world. Now, you can be the other extreme where you spend the first month in going through it, and you spend the 8.9 months in the world of Asiya before you come down to this world, in the physical, spiritual world, right? So when you come down to this world, the only thing you know is physical things. Physical coarse things. Try to talk to a person like that about spirituality, it's very hard. They have to really work on themselves to refine themselves, because they never really, they went straight into the process, and the descent was more, and then you have obviously hundreds and thousands and millions of combinations depending on where you spend the time coming down here. So you could have spent, let's say, most of the time in the world of Bria, Yetzirah. Again, it could be multiple combinations, millions of combinations, right? So the author explains that what happens is, let's say somebody went through. So the world of Atzilut is on the spiritual chart of the Kabbalah. It mirrors the world of Ratzon, your will. The world of Bria is the world of intellect. The world of Yetzirah is the world of emotions, and the world of Asiya is the world of action. Right? So what happens if somebody spent their whole, in the process of coming down to this world, in the world of Bria, never spent any time in the world of Yetzirah? Now, what we say, the world of Yetzirah is what? The world of emotions. So when he comes down to this world, he can't relate to emotions. You have people that really, they're brilliant, very, very smart, they know all the answers, they know everything, but emotions are like, I wouldn't say dead, because no one's ever dead, but it's like, from 1 to 10, it's like maybe the half. They're just emotionally not developed. They're not, their IQ and EQ, their EQ is totally like almost flat. Why? Spiritually, because they never went through that process. So you have somebody that can meditate, and guess what? They can meditate, and guess what? They don't get fired up. So it could very well be because spiritually they never really developed when they came down to this world, in the world of Yetzirah. So therefore they have a spiritual stronghold is in the world of intellect, but the world of emotions is very, very weak. And therefore they're not going to get inspired. But here you have a Beinoni, back to the point in Tanya, here you have a Beinoni comes onto this world and he's meditating, and guess what? He understands it, he comprehends it, he understands about God, but guess what? Love is not. It's not happening. It's not happening. He knows it.
He doesn't feel it.
He doesn't feel it. So obviously, back to the point: thought, speech, and action. It's not a problem. He can still do it, and that's great if you can do that. That is a great place to be. You're a Beinoni. But what's the problem here? The problem is that the world of emotions. So it comes along the Alter Rebbe, and the Alter Rebbe says as follows. Since ultimately the Beinoni doesn't want to live like a robot, because think about it, thought, speech, and action is great, but it's robotic in a certain way. The goal is to get the meditation going, to kick in the emotions. But since this person, the emotions aren't fired up, the Alter Rebbe says, and he explained the reason why he doesn't get fired up, so he said there's something which is called, I'll say it in Hebrew, I'll translate it, talumat halev, which means like this. When a person meditates, so if you're somebody that was spiritually, emotionally developed, it means you went through your proper times in the world of Yetzirah, great, you're going to feel the love and you're going to feel the awe of God. What happens if somebody wasn't emotionally developed spiritually? So what does that mean? He has no emotions? He has emotions. Guess what? But it's not excited. There's in Hebrew, there's someone that their emotions are excited. It's called ava, fire, love, kerish be'esh, like a burning fire. If someone has like a love for something, it's like burning fire, right? A passion. But what happens if someone doesn't have that? But they have something which is called ava. In Hebrew, it's called av b'tanugim, a love of delights. It means it's more of a calm love. It's a very, very calm, surreal love. It doesn't mean it's not love. Because you can love something without the passion and be deep and pretty strong. So the author said that through meditation, the Beinoni, even though you don't see the love flying, but guess what? There is love there. Because think about it. Because if there is no love there, why would he do all the right things? Why would he say all the right things? Why would he think all the right things? Because there is love there. It's a different type of love. It's a love that's more subdued, but it's real love. So now, just because somebody has love with passion doesn't mean the other person that has like a calming love is not real love. It's two different. It's both from the same family. It's just expressed and manifested in two different ways, and one is not better than the other. It's just two different levels and two different types. So the Alter Rebbe says, since this person goes ahead and meditates about the greatness of God, and it's a real meditation, and the person, will skip a step, will come back, is inspired to think all the right things, and think peacefully and lovingly and happy, etc., and to say all the right things, and will do all the right things, so guess what happens? Obviously it kicked in, the love kicked in. But the only thing is, the love is not bouncing all over the place. It's just a very, very calm, soothing love. Like a very, very peaceful, relaxed love.
We don't want to judge it.
You're not judging it. We're just defining what it is. So in other words, the Alter Rebbe says, guess what? This is real love, a different type. And the proof is that this love fuels his thoughts, it fuels the speech, and fuels the actions. So in other words, ultimately, could every single person, even the one that can't fuel the love like we discussed last week, the one that serves God. This is also serving God. Because as long as you do the meditation, you will produce love. In other words, like this, the author explains that husband and wife, when they get together, intimacy, they produce a child. Certain children are, right, all over the place.
And so good.
God forbid. They're all good. Certain are very energetic, and certain kids are more calm and relaxed, but they're still kids. The same thing also. The author says when there's meditation, when you meditate about the greatness of God, by default you have to become in love with God. Your love will be based on the type of love, energy you received when you came down to this world. If you spent a lot of time in the world of Yetzirah, oh my gosh, that love is going to be passionate. If you spent more time in the world of Bria, etc., your love is going to be what? It's going to be there, but it's not going to be as passionate, but it's going to be real love. It's real love. So therefore, as long as a person meditates, and the proof is in the pudding, because if you're doing all the right things, and you're saying all the right things, and you're thinking all the right things, guess what? The love kicked in, but not necessarily on the same way as someone that's passionate. It might not be noticeable, but it's still really there. So based on this, the Alter Rebbe explains something very, very powerful. And he says as follows, and it's very interesting, that there's an expression that says that let's say somebody, I'll say it in Hebrew, I'll translate. Let's say somebody had a machshava tova. Someone had a good thought. Let's say someone had a good thought, he wanted to do something good. And guess what happened? He didn't do it. But you had a good thought to do it. So the expression is, machshava tova, someone has a good thought, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God, will mitzarfa, will connect it to an action. So the question is asked, one second. The simple meaning of that is, if you have a good thought to do something, even though you didn't end up doing it, God will give you credit for it. That's a simple interpretation. You had a good thought of doing something, God gives credit. But the question is, it doesn't say God gives credit. If you look at the translation, it says a person has a good thought, God connects it to an action. What action is he connecting it to?
Yeah.
What action?
What?
The word should have been, God considers it as a good thing, but it says he connects it. So the author explains, he's talking exactly about this level of the Beinoni. Because think about it. The Beinoni is meditating, but it's not producing any fiery emotions. So guess what? How is the actions and the speech and the thoughts going to work? So God bridges that gap. That weak point where the person has, where the emotions aren't fired up, God takes that powerful intellect, the meditation, and connects it over to the action of action, the action of speech, and the action of thought, and God makes that connection. So as long as you will go ahead and meditate about the greatness of God, and about all the wonderful things, I think in English it's called being grateful, right? As long as you're being grateful, whether you say it, you think it, guess what? You're going to start feeling real feelings. In other words,
God will do the rest.
And God will connect, exactly, the bridge of emotion that's missing. And the author points out something very, very profound, and also this is a very interesting Kabbalistic idea, and he says like this, that what happens is, when we do in this world mitzvot, right? We do good deeds in this world, whatever the mitzvot are. So obviously, we're living a good life, but ultimately, when do we get a reward and award for all the good things we do in this world? Anybody know? Huh? Exactly. So ultimately, the reward you get for doing mitzvot in this world, for living a good life, is not in this world. This is a transient world. We're all tourists over here. We have tourist visas for a couple of years.
Florida.
Huh?
Oh wait, we live in Florida.
We're tourist visas. We have all tourist visas from God here for a short amount of years. But all the good things we do in this world, for example, we're happy, right? We pray, we study, we do mitzvot, we have a positive attitude, we don't let the negativity get to us, right? We control our actions, our speech, and our thought.
Not the rest of us.
That which is a struggle, right? But nevertheless, anytime we overcome an obstacle, guess what? It's like putting, you put money in a CD, and eventually you retire, and hopefully the money's still there if the bank didn't go bankrupt, right? But the point is, God's bank never goes bankrupt. But anytime you do a mitzvah, anytime you overcome an obstacle, you want to get upset and you don't get upset, guess what? Boom, another ding, another $1, $10, whatever, $100, whatever you want to put in the CD, goes in the CD. When do you take it out? When you finish your tourism in this world, after 120 or whatever the time is, you come to heaven, and guess what? Your bank account's waiting there for you. Now, in order for your bank account to be full there, you need to make deposits. Where do you make deposits? In this world. Here in this world, you have the power to make deposits in the world to come. Why? Because in this world, there's so many struggles. It's easier to give in, but when you fight and don't give in, and nevertheless you still get up and you still put on a smile and you pray and you study and you do mitzvot and you're nice even though the person upset you. So you're fighting with your evil inclinations. Every time you fight and you so to speak win the fight, guess what? Money goes in your CD. Now, the reality is like this. How much money goes in? So there's two types. One, there's quantity of the money. And I'll explain spiritually what it means. And B, it's the quality. What does that mean? So every time you do a mitzvah, you get some money, right? Anytime you pray, anytime you overcome a struggle, you get funds into your bank account in the world to come. Now, what happens? We're in the world to come to go, because we know, for example, in the world to come, there's different levels, right? Because just like you have in this physical world, so when you leave this world, so you have in the spiritual world, even in the spiritual world, there's the world of Asiya in the spiritual world, which is it's like the low level, it's like beyond the bleacher seat, in a good game, right? So the world of Asiya, which is the world of action, then you have the world of emotions. That's already closer up. And then you have the world of intellect, which is even closer. And the world of will and pleasure, which is even closer, to being right there with God, right? Now, how do you move up and rank in the seats in heaven? Very simple. If you just do the mitzvot and you basically live on a functional level, where are your seats? In the world of Asiya. All the way in the back. All the way in the back. No view, right? Exactly, going through the motions. You got Asiya seats. What happens if you're compassionate about life and about Judaism and about God and about Torah and about mitzvot and about being positive and happy? You're fueled up emotionally. So guess what?
Seats.
Not yet. You got some good seats. You went out of the world of Asiya into the world of
passion.
Yetzirah, the world of Yetzirah seats. So now you have the emotional seats, right? You're getting closer. What happens if you not only are excited, but you actually spend a lot of time meditating, and your mind, you realize, oh my gosh, God is it. This is the only real thing. But it literally lights up in your mind. You see the light intellectually. So guess what happens? Now when you do the mitzvah, or when you pray, or when you study Torah, you're studying from not just a functional level, not just because it feels good, but also because you see the light, you connect on an intellectual level. Guess what seats you just got?
The box seats then?
Almost.
Okay.
The world of Bria, the Bria seats, right? What happens if your will is lined up with God's will? Now you got front row seats. That's the world of Atzilut, right next to God.
Are you able to move up if you're talking about the world to come?
Yes.
So you're moved on. Now you're in these bleacher seats.
Right.
Is that eternal?
Are you stuck there?
Yeah.
So the thing is this: there are certain things you can do up there to get points, but that's why when someone passes, first of all, we have to say that's when someone passes away. So your children, grandchildren, or people that can do mitzvot for you on your behalf will give you that push up there.
That's interesting.
I'm going to get what do you call it?
The children can do it.
Obstructed seats.
No, God forbid. We said you're thinking positive and you're saying positive.
I mean obstructed, but
No, we're only thinking positive things we made up.
Okay, so your children, your grandchildren,
anybody
can their
you can leave a spiritual
deeds, their
yes
their mitzvah, whatever.
Absolutely. Contribute. Absolutely. Yes. That's why a lot of people, they pass away, they leave an endowment, like with a trust company, that should give out charity for them forever. This way, as they give out the charity, they're getting bumped up in heaven. But now, so the point, here's the main point. We all, again, back to the point. The Beinoni, remember, in action he does all the right things and he doesn't do anything wrong. In speech he says the right thing, he doesn't say anything wrong. In thought also. But here's the question. Is he doing it as a robot, as a functional Beinoni? Then guess what? It only goes to Asiya. The seats are Asiya. So you can be a Beinoni, but only earn a seats. And what level Asiya seats? Because you're only functional. You're a robot. Your heart's on it. Whereas once your heart gets into it, your heart is fired up, now you earn seats where? Yetzirah. What happens if not only emotionally are you fired up, but intellectually you study and you comprehend and you see the light? Now you own sits in Bria. And now you're on the level of, listen, whatever God's will, that's my will, and that's now you're flying. So what seats do you get?
That's the box seats.
That's Exactly.
Behind the dugout on the home team side.
Right there, exactly. Right there, exactly.
God's will is my will.
That's God's will is your will, absolutely. So in other words, so even though a regular standard Beinoni, what's a standard Beinoni? Someone that
Stick shift.
Someone that all his actions are good, and his speech is good, and his thoughts are good, and you're right. You know what I mean? He hasn't worked out his emotions and his intellect. That's standard. But the reality is, the Alter explained today in Tanya, that every single person, through meditation, can either reach up that level that we spoke about last week, where his emotions are fired up, or even if it's not fired up, but the fact is that you made a commitment in your mind that this is the right thing to do. You lit up your brain, so the emotions, even though they're not fired up, the emotions are there, because it's impossible it's more subdued, but the emotions are there. But ultimately, the point the author is bringing out, which is very, very important to know, that based on the effort you put in to fire up emotions or fire up your intellect, that's the type of really seats you're producing for yourself in the world to come. So you have to, what it does is it really empowers you, realizes, oh my gosh. Just like, for example, you all want to have, you want to earn a livelihood, but you have to think about the livelihood in heaven. You can't, after 120, the game is over. Whatever you earned in this world, that's what you have. So you have to remember, in this world, you got to invest for the future. And this is the best investment, because this is going to give you the best spot. So it's not only important to functionally do whatever you have to, and obviously that's basic. I mean, that's non-negotiable. Thought, speech, and action is non-negotiable. You have to also work on being inspired emotionally, which comes from intellect, but really meditating on it to the point where your will and God's will should hopefully be the same. And when a person does that, now you reach the level.